Hello, buddy. Welcome back to Tin Man's Core Channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and today I'm reacting to my third and final Midnight Terrors video for you guys, and this is titled 5 Creepy True Alone at Night Horror Stories. So without further ado, I'm going to turn these lights off, move the camera up here for you guys, and let's get this reaction on the road in the bag, shall we? Okay, here we go.
This happened about 4 years ago when I was bartending.
Okay.
It was a busy Friday night, and I was working with our bar manager when he asked me to run out and grab some last-minute supplies we'd need to get through the weekend. You know, stuff like limes, lemons, bitters, all that good bar stock. There's a 24-hour grocery store just a few minutes down the road, so I grabbed my keys and headed out without thinking twice. For context, I was 25 at the time, blonde, pretty slim, and definitely used to getting attention from people while working, but nothing ever felt particularly threatening. Anyway, I'm flying through the store, knocking stuff off the list. No issues. But once I get to the liquor aisle, I notice 2 guys, probably around my age, just loitering. They had that rough around the edges country boy look. Flannel shirts, trucker hats, the whole thing. As soon as I walked by, they stopped talking and just stared at me, whispering back and forth with these weird smirks like they thought they were being subtle. I figured they were just being creepy, so I grabbed what I needed as quickly as I could and made a beeline for self-checkout, hoping that would be the end of it. Nope. They followed me, like right up to the register next to mine. Up close, they looked even more off. One was tall and kind of built. The other was shorter and stockier. Both of them looked like they hadn't showered in a couple days, and their eyes were super bloodshot, like they were either drunk or on something.
They see a pretty blonde-headed girl. They think they probably could walk up near her and try to follow her when she leaves. At that point, I'll be like walking over to tell an employee when I get done checking out about what they're doing and acting like, just to see if they can stall them real quick, long enough for me to get out and to the car and go. Because I know her, she probably don't want them following her back to where she either works at or where she lives. But the way she's describing, they do sound like some rough dudes. They might be high on alcohol, weed, or some other drug. Who knows? But anyway, let's just see where this story goes, shall we?
As I'm scanning my stuff, the taller one starts chatting me up, saying stuff like, "Looks like you're ready to party," and asking if I wanted to hang out with them later. I tried to brush it off politely. You know, just that quick smile and nod Midwest move to avoid confrontation. But they weren't taking the hint. It started going downhill fast. One of them made a comment about how I probably only mess with doctors and rich guys, and how I thought I was too good for them. Then he said something about how they could teach me a lesson, and the way he said it made my stomach twist. It was definitely threatening, and suddenly I was in that weird, quiet panic mode where your body goes on autopilot. I casually reached into my purse like I was grabbing my wallet, but really I was sliding my pocket knife up my sleeve just in case things went south. I made eye contact with the woman monitoring the self-checkout lanes. She was tall and solid, not someone to mess with, and tried to give her a look that screamed, "I don't feel safe right now." Almost like she read my mind, the machine started beeping like it glitched, and she swooped in. The second she got close, those guys switched up their whole act. Suddenly, they were cracking jokes, pretending we were friends, trying to play it cool like nothing was going on. One of them even said I was trying to steal something, like it was all some inside joke. But the worker wasn't buying it for a second. She gave them the most unimpressed look and canceled my order on the screen. Then she turned to me and said, super calmly, "Let me ring you up at another register." She gently steered me away toward a register near the security office and kept herself between me and the guys. While scanning my stuff, she quietly said, "There was nothing wrong with that self-checkout. I saw the way they were acting, and I've already got security ready to walk you out to your car when you're done." Then she added, "Also, good job on pulling out that knife. I saw that. You were ready, and that's smart." but I'm glad I got to step in before you had to use it.
Thank God. There was an employee looking that direction and saw that she needed some help. Because if she didn't walk over there, cancel her order, and walk her away from them guys. But yeah, if they were acting like they were going to teach her a lesson, then that sounded like they're not very kind towards women who don't date those type of guys. And if she had to use that knife, the employee would be on her side because those guys are creeping on her.
At this point, the two guys had paid for their stuff and were just loitering near the exit, watching me. The worker kept tapping at her register like she was having trouble just to stall them. Eventually, they gave up and left. Or so we thought. I got a call from my bar manager while we were waiting, and I explained everything. He was furious and said he was ready to drive over and handle it himself, which was sweet, but not necessary. When we finally went to leave, the worker and the security guard walked with me through the nearly empty parking lot. And guess what? Way at the back of the lot, there was this big old pickup truck just idling there, headlights on, pointed directly at the store entrance. They had moved the truck so they could see when I came out. I wasn't getting in my car until I was sure they were gone. When they saw me standing with the store worker and the guard, all three of us just staring them down, they peeled out of the lot in this aggressive burnout, like they were trying to intimidate us one last time. Pathetic, honestly. I must have thanked that worker and guard a dozen times. I even wrote a long letter to corporate explaining everything and making sure they knew how awesome those employees were. She didn't have to go that far for me. She didn't even know me. But she did, and I honestly believe she might have saved my life that night. Since then, I've never gone shopping alone after midnight, and I never will again.
Yes, I would do the same thing because that security guard and worker deserve a raise for helping out a stranger from these two weirdos. But once they saw them with that woman, but man, I'll be getting the security camera and report the vehicle and license plate to cops so they can go question them. And if they're up to no good, arrest them. And I wouldn't blame her for going back to a store alone at night. I wouldn't either. I like to have some company with me while I go shopping. Because you never know if a weirdo or a bunch of creeps like them will show up trying to talk to you and you don't even know. And if they try to ask you to go to a party with them, I would refuse because I'm not a huge drinker person. But anyway, let's get to story number 2, shall we?
So this happened over 3 decades ago. But honestly, it's one of those memories that never fades. I was in college back then, and for whatever reason, I decided it'd be a good idea to sign up for this outdoor survival course. It sounded kind of badass at the time. Just you, the woods, and whatever skills you managed to pick up in class. The final test was this 3-day solo camping thing, where they'd drop each of us off in separate spots out in the wilderness, and we had to survive on our own using just a super basic kit. I'm talking no food, no water, just a few essentials like a sleeping bag, a knife, 6 matches, a plastic sheet, and a pot to boil whatever water we managed to find. So I got dropped off at my location, tied a little flag to a tree so they'd know where to come pick me up later, and hiked deeper into the woods to set up camp.
You know, I never thought that colleges have a outdoor survival course. You would have thought you would learn all that stuff like in Boy Scouts or some summer camp activities. But that's pretty cool that you get to pick up something like that at college. So that when you're out in the woods by yourself, you know how to survive if you get stranded. But anyway, let's continue, shall we?
I was actually really into it. Like, completely in my element. The first night was peaceful. I built a little fire, wrapped up in my sleeping bag, and just let the sounds of nature lull me to sleep. I woke up thirsty, of course, so I spent the morning looking for a water source, and eventually found this murky little stream. Not ideal, but I let the water settle, dropped some purification tablets in, boiled it for good measure, and choked it down. Not exactly bottled spring water, but hey, It did the job. Everything was great up until the last afternoon. I packed up my camp, hiked back to the drop-off point, and sat down against a tree, just waiting to be picked up. I heard a vehicle coming in the distance and figured it must be my ride. But instead, this old beat-up truck pulled up. Definitely not part of the program. The guy inside looked like he crawled straight out of a true crime documentary. He had this weird smirk and immediately started asking me what I was doing out there and if I was alone. My stomach turned. I lied and told him some friends were still packing up behind me. He didn't look convinced. He gave me this long stare, like he could see right through me, then got back in his truck and drove off. The second he disappeared down the path, I grabbed my pack and bolted into the woods. No way was I sticking around to see what he was really up to. And sure enough, just a couple minutes later, I heard his truck coming back. My heart was pounding in my ears as I crouched behind a cluster of trees and tried not to make a sound. I could hear him walking around, calling out, rustling through the brush. He was definitely looking for me. Eventually, after what felt like forever, I heard the truck door slam and the engine start again. I didn't move until I was completely sure he was gone. Then I took off walking, trying to find my way back to base camp, because there was no way I was going back to that drop-off point. After hiking for what felt like hours, I finally ran into a forest ranger. I practically collapsed with relief. I told him everything, and his face went serious. He said they'd been on alert because a woman had been attacked in the area just the night before, and they'd been actively searching for the guy. Turns out another girl from my course had a close call too. She managed to scare some guy off by blowing on this loud brass whistle until help came. So yeah, I think about that trip a lot. If there's one thing I took from that experience, it's to always trust your gut. The second something feels off, it probably is. And no matter how tough or independent you are, solo camping in unfamiliar territory can get dangerous real fast. Honestly, I haven't camped alone since, and probably never will.
Man, I'm sorry that happened to you. There's always some crazy people out there that want to ruin a camp excursion. But amen to trusting your gut, because that literally saved you from a creep who probably wanted to kidnap you or do god awful things with you. But thank God there was a park ranger nearby and was able to help her out. But man, I hope he got caught, because he don't need to be out there trying to scare campers, kidnapping people for his own sick personal benefits. But I'm just glad that he did not turn his vehicle around and start chasing her down the road while she was hiking. So if you go out camping, always bring a camping buddy with you. I know it sounds silly. You always got to be prepared for these type of situations if they arrive around your camping area, that is.
This happened a couple years back when I was 16, and even though it was supposed to be just a chill family trip, it turned into something that honestly still messes with me. We were staying at this really fancy hotel in a supposedly safe part of a big Midwestern city. I had my own room. My parents were just a few doors down, and at the time that felt totally fine. I'd stayed in hotels before. Nothing had ever happened, so I didn't think twice about being by myself.
You know, I always thought that if we went to a hotel at a place that we were vacationing at, what it would be like to have my own room and let my parents have another room next door if need be, just so we have each other's privacy. But then again, it will probably cost more money just to stay in two rooms. So I kind of like the arrangement we do now where we go someplace we just only get one room with two beds. I sleep on one bed, my parents have the other. But anyway, let's just continue on with the story, see what happens next.
The first night there was totally uneventful. I hung out in my room, watched one of those overpriced movies they charge you for, and snacked on way too many overpriced cookies from the minibar. The next morning, we did the usual tourist stuff, walked around, took photos, and had breakfast at the hotel restaurant. And that's when I noticed this older man, probably in his 60s, just staring at me. I tried not to overthink it. I figured maybe I looked like someone he knew, or maybe he was just a creep giving off weird vibes like some men do. Either way, I brushed it off and didn't mention it. That night, my parents said it was fine for me to go out for dinner with a friend I knew from social media who lived nearby. We'd been talking for a while and finally decided to meet up in person. We ate, caught up, and ended up back at the hotel bar for a drink. Yes, I know I was underage, but let's not focus on that part. And wouldn't you know it, the same guy from breakfast was there, sitting at the bar, just watching me. But this time, it was different. The way he looked at me gave me full-body chills, like he wasn't just being weird, he was fixated. My friend Ethan noticed it too, and leaned over to say something like, "Okay, that guy's staring at you way too hard." We didn't stick around. It was around 12:30 in the morning, so we decided to head out. Ethan walked me to the elevators, gave me a hug goodbye, and left once I hit the button. And literally seconds after he turned the corner, this dude, yes, the same guy, just appears beside me, like he'd been waiting or something. I felt frozen. I knew he was going to see what floor I got off on, and I wasn't thinking clearly enough to just fake it and get off on a random one. We both got in the elevator, and I could feel his eyes crawling all over me. He didn't even press a button, which made it so much worse.
Man, if I was this girl's friend, I would have been like telling that dude, "You want to get on the elevator before us?" And if he tries to say, no, you're good, and gets on the elevator with her, I'll be furious. Because it seems like you got a creepy stalker dude that don't want to give up on his prey. Even though that sounds sickening to say. Man, if her friend Ethan saw him, he needs to report hotel security to get him away from her. This is really creepy.
When the doors opened on my floor, I walked as quickly as I could without actually running. But I could hear that he wasn't following me. He just stood at the end of the hallway, watching where I went. I got into my room, locked the door, and just sat there in silence for a while, trying to calm down. Eventually, I worked up the nerve to go tell my parents what had happened, and they were obviously freaked out. We told the hotel staff, but by then the guy had vanished. They said they'd look into it, but it was late, and there wasn't much they could do right then. So I went back to my room and tried to sleep. I was just starting to doze off when there was a knock at my door. At that point, every scary story I'd ever read online came flooding into my brain. I didn't say a word at first. I just flipped on a light and stood there listening. The knocking got louder, more urgent, and I finally shouted out, asking who it was. And I swear, the voice that answered was straight out of a nightmare. This creepy, high-pitched giggle mixed with this scratchy whisper that said, "Hotel staff, open up, please." I froze. I looked through the peephole and my stomach dropped. It was him, the same creepy man, now right outside my room. I grabbed my phone and locked myself in the bathroom as I called my dad. Thankfully, he always leaves his ringer on, and he picked up fast. I was crying so hard I could barely get the words out, but I managed to tell him that the guy from the elevator was now at my door. What happened next still feels surreal. My dad stormed out of his room and found the man standing outside mine, in nothing but a hotel robe, and he was doing something no one ever wants to see. My dad lost it. He punched the guy, hard, and pinned him to the floor while my mom called security. The police came, and it turned out this wasn't the guy's first offense. He got arrested, and last I heard, he's doing time now, probably for attempted assault or worse.
Oh, heck no, that is disgusting. He felt so attracted to you that he thought he should mess with himself. Jeez Louise. That's just gross. And he's basically out there naked with a bathrobe. I guess if he thought that she was naive, she opened the door and he would pin her down in the bed and did something terrible. But thank God she did the right thing and had that door locked, called her dad, and He knocked him down to the ground until security came up there and got him. I hope he stays in prison for a long time because he don't need to be back on the street at all. That is just sickening. I can't believe that actually happened. I'm sorry that poor girl had to go through all that. One big hotel survival nightmare for sure.
All right, so let me give you a bit of background first. At the time, I was 16, about 5'7", pretty lean, around 115 pounds, and super into sports. I played everything from basketball to volleyball, and even did some track, so I could run if I had to. Also, thanks to my lovely insomnia, I was always wide awake deep into the night. This all went down on a summer night in August, back in 2019. It was just past 2 a.m., and I'd been hanging out at my best friend's place. She'd just come back from a vacation, and had picked up a couple of birthday gifts for me. Some hoodies and candy. Yes, the good kind of gummies. We talked for a while, laughed a lot, and eventually I realized I should probably head home before things got sketchy. The area we lived in wasn't exactly known for being the safest after dark.
Oh, that's nice that her friend gave her some nice gifts like candy and a shirt for her birthday. But this person does have a point because if you're in a sketchy neighborhood, you never know who will be out after dark. Murderers, thieves, rapists, I mean, you just don't know.
Think shady people, late night trouble, the whole deal. So I said goodbye and started walking down her street alone. As I made my way toward the main intersection, I noticed a couple of guys crossing the road behind me. They were maybe 20 or 30 yards back, tall, probably close to 6 feet or more. At first, I didn't think much of it, but something about the way they suddenly stopped and stared at me just didn't sit right. You know that feeling when you can tell someone's looking at you for the wrong reason? Yeah, it was that. Then I heard one of them say, "Hey, that's a girl." Immediately, my gut went on high alert. I glanced back again, and now they were moving. One stayed in the middle of the road. The other disappeared off toward the sidewalk where the streetlights didn't reach. I didn't know exactly what they were trying to do, but I wasn't about to wait around and find out. I sped up, trying not to break into a run yet, but my brain was screaming at me to go. I glanced behind again, and the guy in the road was still coming straight for me. It really clicked when I realized the second guy was nowhere to be seen. He was probably trying to cut me off. They were clearly trying to trap me between them. At that point, I took off running. I heard one of them yell, "Oh great, now she's running." And that's when the adrenaline kicked in. I cut down a side street, turned again, just trying to put distance between us. I didn't even care where I was going. I just needed to not be near them. Eventually, I came across this little apartment complex with a dark parking lot behind it. No lights, no people, just rows of parked cars. I made a snap decision and dove underneath one of them, tucking myself in as tight as I could. My heart was pounding like crazy. I held my breath and waited. A few seconds later, I saw both of them run past the lot, scanning the area but not checking under the cars. That moment was terrifying. I felt like a hunted animal just trying not to be seen. I waited until I couldn't hear them anymore, then crawled out and made my way home using a completely different route. I was terrified they'd somehow loop back around or still be out looking. I didn't tell the cops, which I know sounds dumb, but I couldn't really give a good description of either guy since it was so dark, and I never saw their faces properly.
Okay, I think I remember this story from his other channel, Midnight Tales, another video on a different subject. But yeah, that would be scary just to be walking and then all of a sudden two guys just come out of nowhere and start chasing you because they saw that you were a girl that they would probably think, oh good, she's an easy target to grab. But nope. She was smart enough to run and hide underneath a car and wait for them to pass by just so she could get back home quick. But that would make my adrenaline pump quick for sure. Because you never know, them guys are armed with guns and they might end up pulling them out to fire at you just so you could stop dead in your tracks, or they might get into a car and chase you. But thankfully, she got out of there quite all right. There's people like that need to be behind bars for terrorizing innocent people. All right, let's get to story number 5 and close the video out, shall we?
This happened when I was 14, and I still get chills thinking about it. I'm 23 now, but back then I had just gotten home from a beach birthday party for my best friend Mia, who was a few years older than me. I was sunburned, tired, and just wanted to get home and crash. When I got off the subway near my place, I checked the digital screen for my usual bus and saw it wouldn't be coming for like an hour. No way I was waiting that long, so I figured I'd take a different bus that would drop me off a little farther from my place, but still walkable. That choice seemed harmless at the time, but it ended up being a huge mistake. So the alternate bus drops me off, and I've got about a 10-minute walk back to my building. My neighborhood is usually super quiet at night, barely any cars and not many people out. I was halfway down the street when I noticed the hum of a slow-moving engine behind me. I glanced over my shoulder and saw this white panel van coming down the street. Yeah, I know. Classic horror movie van.
I wouldn't be making a joke about it, so maybe waiting for the bus to arrive in an hour that usually takes you to your stop would have been a lot easier and wouldn't have to go through this traumatic experience.
At first, I tried not to freak myself out. I figured it was just someone driving home or maybe making a delivery or something. But when I turned onto my street, the van turned too, and now I was definitely uneasy. I picked up the pace, trying not to look paranoid, but the van never passed me. It just cruised behind me, matching my speed like it was tailing me on purpose. When I got to the long driveway that leads up to my building, I figured, okay, this is it. If they're really following me, they'll turn too. And, yep, they did. I walked along the edge of the ice rink that's beside the driveway, trying to stay under the floodlights. There are some townhouses nearby, but no one was outside. The van finally pulled up right beside me and stopped. For a second, I convinced myself the guy might be lost and wanted to ask for directions. I stayed a few feet away from the van window just to be safe and glanced inside. There was this older man, looked like he was balding, dark hair, wearing a plain white t-shirt. I asked, "Are you lost?" But he didn't say a word. Instead, he just motioned for me to come closer like he wanted me to get in. I immediately backed away and started walking faster, but the van kept crawling next to me like it was trying to corner me. Then, a red car started coming down the driveway, and the van took off toward the end like it didn't want to be seen. But as soon as the red car turned out of the driveway, the van reversed and lined up with me again. It was such a creepy pattern. He kept trying to follow me, but the second a car came by, he'd disappear to the end of the road, wait, and then come back. I wanted to run to my building, but I was scared he'd see where I lived. So I just kept walking and hoping he'd lose interest. That's when I got lucky. A cab pulled up near the townhouses to drop someone off, and the driver happened to look in my direction. He noticed me right away and asked if I was okay. I told him what was going on, how the guy in the van had been stalking me and kept circling back every time another car left. Without hesitating, the cabbie told me he'd drive up to the end of the driveway and sit there to give me a head start to get inside safely. I thanked him, and as the cab rolled forward, the van followed it again. I used that moment to bolt. I sprinted up the rest of the driveway and ran straight into my building's lobby, slamming the door behind me. My hands were shaking. When I finally got up to my apartment, I went to my room, shut the blinds, and called the cops. While I was on the phone, I peeked out through a crack in the window, and there it was again. The same creepy van was slowly driving in circles around my building like it was looking for me. I was full on panicking now. The police showed up not long after to check the area, but the van was already gone. 2 officers came upstairs to get a statement from me. and I did my best to explain everything, even though I was still rattled. About a week later, those same officers returned. They brought a still image from one of the security cameras mounted outside my building and asked me if I could identify the guy. The moment I saw the photo, I knew it was him. They told me they'd tracked him down and that he was being added to the sex offender registry. I still think about how differently that night could have ended if that cabbie hadn't stepped in.
Well, it wasn't no van full of kidnappers. It was just one old sex offender, which that would make everybody creep out that there's somebody like that in the neighborhood. But thank God that cab driver helped that lady out of the situation, because she definitely don't want that guy to know where she lived at, because then he'll park the van somewhere and break into her apartment and grab her or molest her in there. Let's just put it that way. And if they see him, I know somebody will report him and have him arrested, because he don't need to be on the streets at all. He needs to be put away for life. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, turn on post notifications for more Midnight Terrors content like this. This has been another successful installment of the Tin Man's Quarter channel. I'm your host, Jeffrey Tin Man Taylor, and I said that's a wrap, and have a nice day, y'all.